What superhero are you?
Peacemaker.
Get out of here!
You a fan?
There's no superhero called Peacemaker.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. Back at it again, talking about everyone's least favorite superhero, Peacemaker. I previously covered the first 3 episodes of the series on the channel, so if you haven't watched that yet, feel free to check it out. Of course, following that up, I will now be covering the next 3 episodes in the canon, and boy oh boy do these 3 episodes do a whole lot. What I really love about this show is that all of these characters feel like real people. And I get how that might sound odd or ironic, considering that we're talking about a show where a lot of the people on the show may not actually be real people. But it's true. Each and every one of these characters put to screen is uniquely flawed in their own way. They're all fucked up in their own specific ways. And yet they never come across as a trope or stereotypical. Well, except for Peacemaker's father. Not a whole lot of nuance in that performance. But to be fair, there's not usually a whole lot of subtlety to outright racism. Usually. Peacemaker was depicted as being an oblivious asshole. But an asshole nonetheless in the Suicide Squad. But this show gives a more in-depth look at how he got to be this way. Despite taking place 4 years into the future, the show tells a whole lot about Peacemaker's past and the events that took place prior to the Suicide Squad. He's a lovable, but also hateable moron who's just trying to do what he thinks is right. The issue is that he's gullible and exhibits piss-poor judgment in the moral department, which is to be expected when someone was raised by the Grand Wizard and was taught hatred. But to his credit, he's desperately trying to find his own way, to find his own feeling of what is right and what is wrong. His judgment is of course clouded by his past upbringing and his just overall stupidity. But the guy does go out there and give it the old college try. And truthfully speaking, when someone has been raised by the type of person that he's been raised by, that mental transition just doesn't happen overnight. Nor does it come with picture-perfect clarity on all things right and wrong. Because of this, the guy's prone to making mistakes. He's constantly confused as to what he should and shouldn't do. And regardless of these facts, he feels strongly about going out there and doing something. He needs to. Sitting idly by is not in his nature. He wants to be a symbol of justice. Hell, a whole lot of the time, he believes that he is a symbol of justice. But at the end of the day, all that really is a front. Deep down, Peacemaker knows that he's clueless. That's why he constantly questions his own actions. That's why he feels so much remorse and an overwhelming amount of guilt for the things that he's done. Things that he once felt so strongly about. What he was positive was a positive thing. He now reflects back on and sees it as a negative. And because of this, he questions his own character. The guy may not have a whole lot of brains, but he does have a whole lot of heart. This show makes sure that you know that. And I think that's the real tragedy of the character. He's dumb, but he's just smart enough to know that he's dumb. He's just smart enough to realize each and every flaw and problem in his life. But he isn't smart enough to make better choices, or to find solutions. He's smart enough to know that his father is a bad person. He's smart enough to know how little he means to his father. But he's not smart enough to not love him unconditionally, despite the fact that his father very clearly despises him. He can't help but love him because that's his dad. That's the only family he's ever known. Well, him and his brother, who is no longer with us. Peacemaker is attached to someone who is completely disconnected from him. Attached to someone who is completely disgusted by him. And yet the guy still wears his heart on his sleeve, acting like the proverbial child in their parents' clothing, desperately trying to play the part and make them proud. Shit like this is where the show excels. It walks the line of being both a comedy and a tragedy. Peacemaker's goofy. There's a reason why I called him Michael Scott with muscles. Which, by the way, from this point on, he shall be known as Muscle Scott. The character's obviously played for laughs. But despite this, his life is overwhelmingly sad. He is sad. When John Cena isn't on screen cutting jokes, he's desperately trying to avoid having a mental breakdown. To no avail, usually. The scenes where we see Peacemaker interact with others, he's kind of a bit of a dick. But in the moments when he's just alone with himself and his own thoughts, we see him really start to unravel. Truth of the matter is that Peacemaker needs these people in his life more than he needs anything else. because around them he's able to put on a strong face, but alone he's reduced to a puddle of a man. Once again, that's why I say this show toes the line perfectly between comedy and tragedy. This is not an easy atmosphere to cultivate. Both John Cena and James Gunn deserve all the credit in the world for being able to make this work. And making it work as well as they do. Believe it or not, I was actually able to get in touch with John Cena himself and get him to spare a few comments for this video. When I asked him about his acting approach and the psychological backing of the Peacemaker character, he said the following. Wow, that guy is a talker, let me tell you. I'll be releasing the full shoot interview with him in the near future, so look forward to that. We learn a lot about Peacemaker and his awful upbringing in these episodes. We also learn a lot about his family life as well. We haven't gotten the full story just yet, because the show does a pretty good job of telling its audience just enough to get them invested, but it also keeps enough of its backstory hidden, leaving each and every arc it sets up, past, present, and future, branded with a to be continued logo, which is the sign of a good storyteller. I can't speak for anybody else, but I personally will be tuning in on a weekly basis because I haven't seen the full story yet. You know, this isn't like Smallville. I can't go missing a couple episodes and still be aware of everything going on. Each episode is integral to the overall plot of the Peacemaker show. Each and every episode seamlessly sticks together, and it feels less like I'm watching a show, and more like I'm watching a movie that's broken down into parts. If you're missing so much as one episode of the franchise, you're missing a whole chunk of the overall story. We learn that Peacemaker's father isn't just the uncle no one likes to talk to or invite to family dinners, due to his extreme beliefs and his constant need to express them. I have one of those myself. We learn that Peacemaker's father was genuinely a white supremacist. Look, you guys know what I'm saying. I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to get demonetized here. This guy was a founding father of hatred. Not only being a bad guy, but being a bad guy. He was the supervillain known as the White Dragon, because of course, it had to be the white something. He also trained both of his sons to kill from an early age. Peacemaker's childhood was less about ice cream and more about making others scream. What I'm trying to say is that there was really no gray areas with this character. Everything about him is black and white. Mostly white. Mostly white. And to make matters even worse, in present day, him and his cult-like followers are now making a return to action. Oh great! Vigilante is hilarious. And in a show of complete comic relief characters, he stands out as the comic reliefiest. I heard a lot of people comparing him to Deadpool, and I really wanted to fight that comparison. But if I'm being honest, there is one to be made. Although I will say that Vigilante is a much more grounded Deadpool. He's not overpowered. I mean, if anything, he's underpowered. And also undereducated, but that's a completely different subject. But his lack of superpowers don't stop him from approaching each scenario like he has the world by the vigilantes. He is a hazard to everyone around him, including himself, maybe especially himself. Unlike Peacemaker, he does have a defined moral code, and it's actually quite strict, which is both a good and a bad thing. The guy is highly offended by racism, but was also ready to assassinate your local pothead. So it's hard to tell where the line is with this one. Also, it's more than likely that he's a bit of a sociopath. He also openly admits to allegedly not having feelings, and has a fondness for killing, as if it's his favorite activity. Like, the dude has no other hobby. Not to mention that he doesn't stand by his code. It's not really solidified, it kinda changes up over time. This character's also prone to manipulation and is self-obsessed enough to make stupid mistakes in an effort to raise his value in the eyes of others. But to his credit, what he lacks in brains, he makes up for in brave. Leota proves to be the most normal of the team. While she's trained in her field, educated in what it is she's doing, and exhibits high intelligence, she's a complete fish out of water. She has the right qualifications, but she's still very out of place. She doesn't like doing the dirty work. She absolutely detests the idea of taking life, and she struggles with the tasks that are assigned to her time and time again. Leota is the socially awkward heart of the team, seeing the best in others even when maybe she probably shouldn't. Not to mention that she's quick to get attached to those she's been assigned to keep an eye on. We learn later on that Amanda Waller essentially had her set up Peacemaker, but we see her struggle with making that decision, as she stated from her very first interaction with Peacemaker that more than thinking that he's a good guy, she thinks that he's a good guy. Clemson Mern was a man of mystery, until it was eventually revealed that he's no man at all. He's a butterfly. I'm just laughing about that because I'm imagining that if you haven't watched the series, but for some reason you're watching my video, my words must make 0 sense to you. There's a really interesting development with his character. This whole time the character's past has been brought up in passing, stating how truly relentless he was in taking lives, how notorious and infamous the guy is for how truly awful he was. But then we find out that ultimately this character isn't the one the series has been building up. It's the butterfly that took that character over. But of course, this butterfly is different. He's not like other butterflies. While his species wants world domination, he just wants to live. And he aids in the fight against his own kind. He thinks what they're doing is completely immoral. And the only reason that he took over Clemson specifically was because this butterfly intentionally went out of its way to find the worst person possible to invade. And yet still, despite this creature is sorry for its actions, feeling that it robbed this man of the opportunity of seeking redemption for his ways. Beard Dye is intelligent from a technological standpoint, but clearly inept socially and also in decision making. Although to be fair, he surprisingly rises to the occasion, saving the team not once, but twice so far in this series, and doing so in a pretty badass way both times. We also get to see Harcourt come out of her shell a little bit in these episodes, showing that despite her rough exterior and annoyed with life attitude, she's actually a somewhat understanding and compassionate individual. Well, as compassionate as her job and life experience allows her to be. But like everyone else, despite what the initial impression would tell you, she's not a one-note character. There's some depth here, and we haven't even begun to explore it yet. We're just scratching the surface of Harcourt. In the latest 3 episodes, we get to see this team band together and bond with each other a lot more. They create a much better dynamic that was intentionally left out when they first formed. We really get to see them become a unit and grow as a group. Peacemaker and Dyebeard are able to bury the hatchet over their mutual love of the same music, which even Harcourt jams out a little bit to later on. Harcourt sees the humanity in each of her teammates individually, and she even gets comfortable enough to reveal her real name to Peacemaker. Leota feels sympathy and empathy for Peacemaker, realizing he's not a bad dude, he's just a very, well, unfortunate one. Judo Master is a master of judo, as one would expect from someone with such a name. And what he lacks in height, he makes up for in ass-kicking. Outside of the need to beat all those who oppose him, he really loves Cheetos. And you know what? Relatable. Even the characters outside of the main plots that are really only around for ambiance. Jamil the janitor, the nosy next-door neighbor, Evan, Amber, they're all great. There is no small part in this show. I think each and every character that has been put to screen has gotten a chance, whether it be a big one or a small one, to shine. Outside of the core group, the show is always introducing new characters, and they never feel tacked on or out of place. It just feels like this part of the DC Extended Universe is constantly extending. The addition of Captain Locke to the plot was fun. He's a former, let's say, colleague of Clemson's, and is every bit as heartless as Clemson was originally depicted to be. And this man gives 0 fucks. Like, he can't even pretend to give one. That's how little he cares. Guy doesn't even attempt to hide his nefarious ways or bother coming up with believable lies for his actions. He literally murders 3 police officers and then tells the other cops that the Hamburglar did it. The guy is terribly transparent, completely blatant in his own bullshit. The cops on the show, while being as comically inept and hysterically worthless as most cops you'll find on TV shows, were hell-bent on doing their job. I mean, they might not have been good cops, but they were good cops. Once again, if any of that makes sense. But all that's about to change anyway, as the entire police squad, the prisoners that were kept in that jail, and probably elected officials surrounding them, have all been taken over by butterflies. The highlight of the show are obviously the jokes, which are really well-timed, well-acted, and just hilarious in their own right. It's honestly hard for me to separate what's scripted and what's improv, because the way these actors play off each other is just so natural, and the dialogue is consistently realistic. I don't want to go out of my way to emphasize just how funny the show is, because A, it's obvious, and B, I don't want to have a serious discussion on jokes. Kind of seems like an oxymoron. And me personally, I'm just a regular moron, so there's no need to add to that. The dynamics between the characters are often interesting. Leota's situation with her mother is almost a strange parallel to Peacemaker's relationship with his father. A parent whose love for their family comes secondary to their own selfish, questionable agendas. And just as Peacemaker wanted to live up to his dad's expectations to earn his unconditional love, Leota is trying to live up to her mother's expectations. Probably for the same exact reason. These two characters share the same exact unique problem. They have the same skill set of their parents. They could very well do what the people who spawned them do, but their hearts would get in the way. The show Peacemaker is completely unpredictable. I never know what's going on from one episode to the next. It always finds a way to surprise me, and every surprise thus far has been a pleasant one. This show is not afraid to take a risk, to introduce a new character, to make a joke on an existing character, to create a new dynamic, to make a parallel between two characters that you would think have nothing in common. To have characters who are portrayed as people, who are not necessarily good or bad, they're just people. Very flawed people. That's the name of the game with the Peacemaker show. And it's because of all these reasons, and many, many more, that this show is
dope as fuck.
And right before I go, if you guys want to see more Peacemaker videos, let me know in the comment section below by saying,
I'm a fucking stud.
So with all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. You all are the Degenerates, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
That's all, folks.